Welcome to the You on the Camino de Santiago podcast. This podcast is for and about first-time pilgrims walking the pilgrimage routes in Spain, France, and Portugal. With your host, guide and longtime pilgrim, Nancy Reynolds of the Camino Experience. Oh, there is some good stuff in this episode, including an alternative way to return home after you walk the Camino. Nancy here with another pilgrim conversation, this time with Diana, who will be walking the Camino Portuguese with her daughter. Diana reminds us that it is as important to plan the journey home from the Camino as it is to think about and plan the actual walking part. I won't spoil the surprise. Instead, I'll invite you to open your mind and heart to new ways of doing things. In all, this is a story of getting the most out of the pilgrimage experience and noticing before you go that reaching Santiago de Compostela isn't the end of the journey. This is a story of love and the relationship between a mother and daughter, who are each finding their own reasons for making this pilgrimage and for making it together. You know, I am seriously interested in the entire arc of the Camino experience, from hearing the call, to planning and preparing, to taking your first steps on the trail, to reaching Santiago, and then to returning home as a seasoned pilgrim. Prompted by Diana's story, I want to invite you to take a step toward bringing your Camino experience home by setting aside some time before you leave for your pilgrimage to think about your return home. Of course, you do need to do some planning to determine the logistics of returning home, as Diana did, but I want to take that a step further with you today and ask this question. What else might you want to think about regarding your return home, in addition to how you will travel back before you even leave to go to the Camino? If you were to put together a coming home plan, what might you put in there? I like to keep things simple, so I'm going to share a few thoughts using an easily rememberable phrase we probably all know. Who, what, when, where, why, and how. I'll start with who. Who do you think might be the first person you'll want to see when you get home from the Camino? Who do you want to meet you at the airport? Who will be the first person you have lunch or coffee with to share about your Camino experience? Next is what. What activities will you have to engage in the moment you return home? What will be on your to-do list when you get back home? Will you have to head straight to the grocery store when you get back? Will you need to go pick up the dog from the pet sitter? Will there be a stack of urgent mail waiting for you, or a full schedule of work commitments or appointments? Or will you return home to a blank slate? What will fill your days when you first return home? Next is when. What time schedule will you be on when you return home from the Camino? Can you slow things down or at least build in some breathing room? When will you take the time to reflect on your pilgrimage? When will you schedule your first lunch or coffee? Next is where. Where will you go after your pilgrimage ends? Will you go right home? Or will you take some extra time in Spain or in Europe, either to be a tourist or to do a post-Camino retreat? Next is why. At the end of the pilgrimage, many of us get caught up in the logistics of getting home or getting to the next place. You may find yourself wondering, what just happened? One of the challenges of returning home from the Camino is deciphering and then applying the lessons learned from the pilgrimage experience, understanding why you did this from the perspective of hindsight. And the last one, how. How will you remember your journey? How will you keep the Camino spirit alive? How will you bring home the experience so it stays with you, rather than drifting back into your long-term memory? These are some good questions to ponder as you think about the far end of your Camino walk. But it's only a start. I am building a workshop that will guide first-time pilgrims in attending to this important part of their Camino planning that should be ready late this summer. It's all part of the new program or structure I'm creating to support pilgrims when they get home from the Camino, the one I mentioned in last week's episode. Now, I will be sharing the details of that with you here on the podcast once they're finalized. But if you are on my email list, you will be the first in line to learn about this new Camino program and to be included when I open it up. If you are not yet on my email list, you can get on there by grabbing a copy of my free Camino Planning Roadmap. You get the roadmap by going to my website, specifically to thecaminoexperience.com/roadmap, or by following the link in the show notes. And by the way, when you get on my email list, you get a weekly newsletter from me with tips and stories and information about the Camino. Okay, last thing before we meet Diana. If you are listening to this episode on the day it releases, which is May 6, 2025, today is the final day of the promotion on my Camino Planning Kit. If you haven't already grabbed your copy, there is still time until midnight on Tuesday, May 6th, California time. You can go to thecaminoexperience.com/kit to get all the details and to find out why this is the perfect tool to make your pilgrimage on the Camino Frances route a reality. Okay, I promised you this conversation with Diana, so let's go ahead and get to that. Diana, hi. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. Welcome.
Good morning. I'm really excited and happy to be here.
Yeah, I was just so excited when I got your request to be on the podcast. There were a couple of things in there that stood out that I want to talk about and share. I think it will be interesting to my listeners, but also gives me a chance to get to know you a little bit and learn about your Camino plans. So let's jump right in. How's that sound?
Perfect.
Okay, great. So the first thing, as you probably know, I always like to put the pin in the map. Will you share with us your Camino plans?
So my daughter and I will be going on the Camino Portuguese, leaving from Porto, Portugal, and making our way up to Santiago de Compostela. And we have some plans for after that, but those are our Camino plans.
Okay, we're going to get to the plans for after because that was one of the things that intrigued me. So we will get to that. So I won't do a spoiler on that one.
Okay.
How much time do you plan to take for your Camino?
So I am planning on about 14 to 15 days for the Camino, for the walk itself. We have, flight reservations, and so we have more time than that, but my plan is 14 to 15 days.
Okay, excellent. And are you going to be booking your accommodations in advance, or will you just jump in and go with the flow and see what happens?
So I am planning on booking our accommodations for when we get to Porto, and we will probably stay 2 days in Porto and then possibly leave about 11. So I have some things I'll want to do before we leave, but so leave on our first stop about 11 or so, and then make reservations for our first stop.
Okay.
But I'm still working on that.
Okay. And then after that, are you thinking you'll just wing it?
After that, we'll kind of wing it. I definitely want to have at least one albergue stay.
Okay.
Just for the experience. But I use a CPAP. And so I recognize that at other times it'd probably be better to be in either a private albergue or maybe a hotel, just in terms of setting that up. I know that people have used a CPAP in albergues, but I don't want to put other people out, and I, want to make sure that I stay healthy.
Yeah, so important. And yes, there are a fair number of pilgrims who do use CPAP machines and take them with them. Definitely. Yeah. And the thing is, I've been in both albergues and private rooms or places with private rooms with people with CPAP machines. And it's interesting that the hosts that I have observed are used to it. They're used to going, oh, you need a lower bunk. Oh, you need an outlet by your bed. Oh, you need an extension cord. So they're very accommodating, the ones that I've seen. So just to reassure you that will work if you're going to plan to do that.
Yeah, I do have a little travel CPAP. It weighs maybe half a pound, if
Oh,
that.
what a
And so,
gem.
yeah, yeah. So that's the one I'll be using.
Okay, very good. Excellent. So you decided to do this with your daughter. Was that your plan from the start?
It was not. So,
Oh.
funnily enough, so I read a book back in January of 2024 called I'll Push You.
Mm,
And the title refers to the fact that these two best friends, one had a neuromuscular disease, and so he ended up being confined to a wheelchair. And so his friend pushed him on the Camino Frances. And I just happened to pick the book up and I read it. And that's kind of what first inspired me to think about the Camino.
that's an incredible story.
It,
Just
it is an
incredible.
incredible story.
Yeah. And there's the book and there's the movie. And I mean, just get the tissues ready because that is
Exactly.
such an incredible story of friendship and community as they make their way along the trail. And you just can't help but want to support people who go after something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was kind of the first part of it, was being a little bit inspired by that and just saying, this is something I think I would like to do. So I started doing some research and I happened upon the Portuguese, and I thought, this would be even better because I don't know that I'm ready to commit to a 500-mile journey.
Okay.
And this one's shorter, but I've also never been to Portugal.
Mm.
And I thought this would be an ideal way to get to explore a place that I've never been and then still do my Camino. So that's why I chose the Portuguese. So this was all on me. And then my daughter, I was talking to my daughter about it, and she said, I'd kind of like to do that. Plus, I kind of want to look out for you. And I was like,
Oh.
I just said, well, I think that over time, her position has evolved from, I want to do it with you because I want to make sure you're safe, to, I want to do it because this sounds like A, an awesome thing for you and I to do together. And B, it's something that I think I would really like to do for myself.
Oh.
So it evolved from me to the two of us.
I love that. So let's talk about that. She felt that she needed to look out for you. Would you share a little bit about that and what was going on there?
Well, it's kind of funny. So I am older and I tend to be kind of adventurous. I was always a tomboy growing up. I'm prior military.
Okay.
I've done lots of adventurous things, and I've done lots of adventurous things with her.
Okay, hold on. Can we clarify older? Would you be willing to say how old you are?
I'm 69.
69. Okay, very good.
Well, I will be 69 this year.
Okay.
Right? Yes, I'll be 69 this
68
year.
going on 69. Okay, very good. Sometimes when people hear older, they think you might be 90. Yeah. And sometimes people hear older and they think you might be 43. So just to kind of place it, because there are so many people in their 60s who are walking the Camino, and anybody who's listening is thinking, wow, older 45, I can't do it. I'm 50, I'm 60. Oh no, people, come on. You can do it. Okay, good.
And you know what? That's entirely correct because I'm not older. I'm kind of like,
Getting started.
yeah, getting started.
Yeah, you're older than she is,
Yes, that
right?
is that is true.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry to interrupt. I had to
That's
say
okay.
that. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So it has evolved from me wanting to do it on my own
Yeah.
to wanting to do it with my daughter. And as I said, she and I have shared several adventures, several trips. And so this is just one more of those that we're going to share.
Okay. So you just described yourself as former military, adventurous. You've done all kinds of things, yet it sounded like her perception might have been a little bit different than that. Can you share a little bit about what was going on there?
I think it's mainly the concept of me doing it by myself. And
Uh huh.
I don't think I conveyed well enough what I thought the Camino would be in terms
Okay.
of, you may be walking by yourself, but you're not alone.
Uh huh.
And I think that was the first part of her concern, was that I'd be alone
Okay.
as opposed to walking by myself.
Okay.
And I think now she has a better understanding of what the Camino is or
Mm-hmm.
can be.
Mm.
But now it's something that we want to share together.
Ah, I love that. So that evolution from I'll
Yes,
protect you, I'll take care of you, to, hold on, this would be a great mother-daughter experience.
Exactly.
When it first got to that point, what did you envision and what did she envision of the mother-daughter experience?
So I think a big part of it is the fact that there will be times when we walk separately,
Mm-hmm.
but there will be a lot of times that we just walk together. We walk together a lot. I have a grand puppy, a dog, and so we go out on frequent walks with the dog when she's visiting us. And so we're used to walking together and sometimes talking and sometimes not.
Mm-hmm. I have such a beautiful picture in my mind right now, the two of you on the Camino together. Yeah. And then you said it has evolved to where now she's thinking, hold on, this is a good thing for me to do. I'd love to hear what you'd be willing to share about what's on her mind about what this could be.
So interestingly enough, I haven't talked a lot to her about how she feels about it now. Those are just the sensations I've gotten.
Okay.
And when I was getting ready, I was on a walk yesterday and I was thinking I should really call her and get more of a concept, but she was busy and so I just didn't. So it's definitely a conversation that or a couple conversations that
Uh-huh.
we're going to have just in terms of maybe setting some not ground rules, but just coming to an understanding of what we might do separately, what we
Yeah.
might do together.
Yeah. I think that's such an important idea to talk about your expectations and how you will work together as a team or how you will be separate when you are
Yes.
separate. Yeah. In season one of the podcast, there's in the episode called Who Are You Going With or something like that, Who is Going?
Yes. Yep.
There's some questions in there and some areas to explore that will help guide those conversations. I think you may have already found that episode.
Yes. And I think what I'll do is I'll send it to her and get her to listen to it.
There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, there
And
we
then we can
go.
have a conversation from there.
Ah, it's great. It's great. And even if you're not two people who would be at each other or who would be at odds or who might trip over different things, to start the conversations now means your Camino experience starts now.
Yes.
And it lays the foundation for just open communication while you're on the trail. And it's really important to have that when things get hard because some days are hard.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and I think part of it there too is that even if I'm hurting, I don't want her to say, well, you're hurting, we should just stop. And so
Oh,
that's one of the conversations we'll have is even if I'm hurting, that doesn't mean I'm going to stop.
I love that. Yeah, let's
Yeah.
find out what a tough one mom is here.
Right.
Very good. I love that picture in my mind. Oh, okay. So you read the book I'll Push You and that brought this into the forefront for you. I'd love to hear a little bit more about how your reasons for walking have evolved and what you're feeling the pull at this point.
So when I first read the book, I was amazed at the spirituality, I guess you could say. I'm not an overly spiritual person, but I do have an element of spirituality in me. And so just the thought of going on a pilgrimage and having that time to kind of examine myself and maybe trust myself a lot more. I mean, I tend to be confident, but I sometimes have self doubts.
Okay.
And I think that the first part of it was just saying this would be something amazing for me to do for myself to have a walk like this with an end in mind, but not have it be super structured where I just walk. And I think that was the first thing that appealed to me was that all I have to do is walk.
Oh, it's almost a sigh of relief when we hear that, right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's all I have to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a couple things going on at home, no matter where home is. That's not just
Yes.
walking. Your day is not
Exactly.
currently just walking. Yeah. Mm. What are you most looking forward to when you think about this journey?
I think a big part of it is going to be seeing my way through obstacles and hurdles
Mm.
and knowing that I can do that. I think another big part of it is just the sheer joy of walking through a country. I've done quite a bit of travel, both with the military and outside of the military, and I think I love to travel, and I love to travel on a more populist level as opposed to a tourist or sightseer level, where I like to take public transportation. I like to explore different areas. I like to talk to people. I like to learn the language of the country that I'm in,
Okay.
to reach out on that level. And so
Oh,
I think that other big part of it was just walking through a country or countries and interacting with nature and interacting with the environment, interacting with the people on a much more personal level than might ordinarily happen.
I love that. Moving at the pace of walking and interacting so intimately with the country and culture we're walking through. We don't get to do that at home all that often.
Right. And
Oh,
I have found that in doing my training walks, I mean, I've been kind of building up my distance, but I've been following a couple of your suggestions where I will stop at the top of a hill and look back.
yes.
I will make sure that I look all around me as opposed to just the path in front of me and notice things and appreciate them.
Yeah.
And even if it's something as simple as, a hillside with bushes, it's like, okay, well, that's a hillside with bushes, but I try to notice things, I guess is what I'm saying, and
Yeah.
appreciate details as opposed to just walking with the path ahead of me and, watching out for rocks, which I still do, but
Still do that. Don't
yeah,
don't
yeah.
change that part. Yeah, I love it. I love that you mentioned that because I'm actually putting together a program for my Camino groups on the meaning and spirituality of the Camino. And as I'm making my notes, the number one, there may be two words that keep coming up. One is attention, and the other is intention. And attention is noticing what is in front of you, what's around you, what's behind you. And that's where the magic is.
Yes.
Oh, I love it. And your face is just all lit up. I love that too. I may someday have to switch to video so people can see the faces of my guests because people just beam when they talk about their Camino plans. Yeah, it's wonderful. Okay. So, moving at the pace of walking, that's what you're most looking forward to. If you took a moment to imagine yourself at either the beginning in Porto or at the end in Santiago, which one of those has the most yay energy for you?
Right now, and I think it's just because I haven't done a ton of thinking about the end. Right now, it's the start
Okay.
from the cathedral in Porto. And I just say that because it's the start of my journey. It's the start of my daughter's and my journey. It's the
Mm,
start of the Camino. And I think that will have great significance for me. I know that in a lot of your interviews, you've talked to people about how will it feel in Santiago, and
mhm.
I still have to work on that image
Okay.
because I'm not sure what it will feel like. I haven't figured out the timing. I know some people say leave early in the morning so you can get into Santiago early, so you can see the cathedral, and other people say no, take your time, enjoy it. And I'm of two minds, so I haven't quite figured out what the completion or the arrival in Santiago de Compostela is going to look or feel like.
Okay.
I've been primarily focusing on what it's going to feel like to start and then what it's going to feel like along the way.
Okay. Well, and the great thing is you don't have to imagine what it will be
Yes.
like to arrive, right? Yeah. It's sort of an exercise of well, let me say this. I ask the question beginning or end to see where people are drawn. And oftentimes I can already tell in our conversation what's most significant, the beginning or the end. And so I ask that. But for you, we hadn't gotten to anything that gave me any clues for that. So I love that you're interested in the beginning because the beginning for me is so significant. You only ever get one first Camino. You've heard
Exactly.
me say that, right?
Yes. I definitely subscribe to that.
So would you share with us what you're anticipating for your start in Porto?
So I haven't booked a place to stay in Porto yet, but I will. So I think the day that we have in Porto to walk around will be kind of soaking up where we're going to be when we start. And I know it sounds kind of weird, but planning our start
Yeah.
so that it's not a complete surprise or wondering which direction we're supposed to go,
Yeah.
which, we'll already know.
There's nothing weird about that.
So that the start is somewhat planned, but at the same time, it's going to be very spontaneous in the sense of, okay, now we're here and now we're starting.
Yeah.
And this is what it feels like.
Yeah. Find the starting point. I love that. With my groups in Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, I usually take them this to the gate, Port de España. This is where we're going to
Mm-hmm.
start our walk tomorrow. And we stand there and kind of think about, wow, what are we doing? Yeah, I think it's so important.
Well, and so my military background, I always do recons, reconnaissance.
I was just going to use the word reconnaissance. It was on the tip of my tongue to say reconnaissance.
So I always do and I mean, part of it's just to kind of set myself up for success, but the other reason is just to kind of gain an appreciation of what the environment is going to be.
Love it.
Yeah.
I so get you. Yeah, reconnaissance. I love that. Love that. Love that. It's a great tip too if you're transiting between trains and airports
Oh, yes.
and maybe staying the night overnight
Mm-hmm.
somewhere, like when people go to Paris or they go through Madrid and then the next day they have to get the train. I always say, do a little reconnaissance work the night before without your backpack, without your luggage. Walk to the train station, find the information board, see what's going here and what's going there. Yeah, it just gives you that added level of confidence and comfort. Yeah.
So I speak French, and
Oh,
so the meaning of the word reconnaissance is literally to recognize or to re-know,
ah,
get reacquainted with. And so that's a big part of it for me is just recognizing where I am and knowing how to go forward.
I love it. Thanks for that. That's really helpful. I was just rereading some parts of The Art of Pilgrimage to get ready for this meaning and spirituality session I'm doing. And Phil Kuzno, the author, talks about some version of reconnaissance when you arrive someplace. Don't just plop down on the bed and go to sleep, even if you're jet lagged. Get out and walk around and do
Yes.
maybe even like a expanding circular investigation of where you are and find what's there and just get your orientation. It's a great tool.
It's like I was telling somebody, and they were like, "You're going to go out and walk around the first day. Aren't you going to be walking 170 miles?" I
Uh-huh.
said, "Yeah, but you know, basically doing a 2 or 3 kilometer walk the day before I start a 170-mile walk is like nothing.
It's warm up. It's walking to the
It's
mailbox and back.
right.
Oh, I love that. I love that picture of getting settled into Porto. And Porto
Mhm.
is a lovely city.
Really looking forward to it.
Ah, for me, it's the quintessential European city. It's on the mouth of the River
Hmm.
Douro. I'm not sure which it is.
I think it's the Douro.
Okay, it's on the mouth of the River Douro. So you've got riverfront, and on the river in Porto, you look across the river to all the cellars where the port wine is aging. And so you can get this idea. I think I'll go do some port tasting across the river. Then it's on the ocean front as well. And then beautiful old architecture and narrow cobblestone streets, and then beautiful new architecture. It's just lovely.
And part of this are my plans for after the Camino.
We are going to get to that. You can count on that. Yeah, I'm so interested in that. All right. So what else? What else would you like to share about your plans for your Camino?
So one of the things I have been working with is walking with trekking poles.
Uh-huh.
Just got a set, and I really enjoy them. I mean, I watched a couple of YouTube videos, and just the idea of using the natural motion of your arms and then
Yes.
the poles. I'm really looking forward to using them. Although the one thing I have to work out yet is how to carry my water bottle
Uh-huh.
in a position where I can grab it and at the same time use the poles.
Yeah.
And part of that in listening to one of your podcasts was your concept of water stops,
Yeah.
but stops where you don't drink while you're walking, you actually stop and drink water.
Yeah.
And I thought that makes a lot of sense because that way I don't have to worry about having it with me. I mean, I'll have it with me, but on my pack as
Yeah.
opposed to at my waist where I can immediately grab it and just walk and drink at the same time.
People think I'm crazy, by the way,
Why?
because I stop. I'm not in some big hurry to get going and march on through. Yeah. Yeah. I do. I stop.
Our first day, if we do start later in the day, then our first day will only probably be about 15, 18 kilometers.
I'm sorry. Only?
Yeah,
Oh.
because I'm planning on doing about 23, 24 kilometers a day.
Okay.
But I want to see how that works.
Okay.
So I want to do just like a half day of walking
Okay.
to get to our first spot, and then wherever that ends up being.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then the next day we can do a longer day.
Okay. Ease into it. Not a bad
Yes.
plan at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not a bad plan at all. Yeah. The first day I always think, I don't think I'm doing a big day. I think what you just described, 12 to 15 kilometers or something around there, 18 max. But then I always the next day is about the same and the next day after that. So
Oh,
I never
well, and
increase my
that's why I thought that if we leave about 11, check out of the hotel. I have some things I want to do. I'll have a suitcase that I need to leave somewhere
Okay.
to come back and get. So I'll have some things that I want to get done in the morning. And I just thought it would be more leisurely and a nicer
Yeah.
start to just wait
Yeah.
until we get that done and then go ahead and start walking.
Yeah, absolutely. You bring up a great point that you get to plan your day.
Yes.
And especially if you have reservations somewhere and they're expecting you,
Mm-hmm.
you have a place to stay secured. You don't need to race to get there. And you can either spend your time at your starting point or on the trail or at the end. And that's the same with every day. You choose where you're spending your time. Yeah.
Exactly.
And then the only tip, if I may add to it, is to make sure that the place that you're staying knows your estimated arrival time and you estimate later than you expect so that they hold your spot for you. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Because that would be disappointing to get there and not have a spot.
We will probably be starting on a Sunday.
Okay.
So then that kind of takes out the do we have to stop somewhere to get a meal? No, because we'll start late enough in the day that we'll have had a good breakfast or even
Yeah.
like an early lunch. And then we'll get to the place and have to worry about dinner, but
Yeah.
it could be a later dinner,
Yeah. Meal planning is so important on the Camino
right?
to make sure you're there when the food places are open. And I now have this beautiful image in my mind of you and your daughter sitting in a cafe on a Sunday morning having breakfast in Porto. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's the way to go. Yeah. Well
With our
done.
packs ready to go. And
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
totally. Okay, now we've got to talk about this extra suitcase that you're leaving behind. And I think that has something to do with your travel plans going home.
correct.
Okay, tell us everything.
So I love to cruise
Mhm.
and I love going on transatlantic or transpacific cruises because I love sea days. So
Ah,
when I first thought of the idea of cruising, or sorry, of walking the Camino Portuguese, I knew it ended up in Santiago de Compostela.
yeah.
And I found a cruise that leaves from Southampton, England,
Oh,
and it goes to Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And I thought
oh.
this would be an excellent way after completing a Camino just to have a little bit of rest and relaxation. I can still walk around the cruise ship.
I just dropped my pen as you're saying this. I'm like, yeah.
So I booked this cruise and it stops in Vigo,
Oh,
leaves Southampton, stops in Vigo, Spain. Then it stops in Porto. Then it stops in Azores and Bermuda and then on to Fort Lauderdale.
and it's like it's coming to get you. Are you getting it from Porto?
No. So I'm getting it from Southampton.
You are. Okay.
Yeah. So, but that's why I need to leave my suitcase in Porto, my bigger suitcase, because I'm not going to carry it with me.
Right.
My daughter will fly out of Porto because she's going to be returning to the States.
Okay.
And then I'm going to go from Porto up to Southampton and then get on the cruise ship.
Oh, I love this.
One of the port stops is Porto. So whatever I didn't get to do or whatever I didn't get to see or buy, I can do when we're in Porto on the stop.
Okay, this is smart. This is a smart plan. I am digging this plan. Oh my gosh. Okay, so tell us about cruising across the Atlantic. Tell us about that because I don't have any experience in that, and I bet some of my listeners don't either.
So I have been cruising now for about 12 years.
Okay.
And when I was younger, I just thought cruise ships, who would want to do that? What on earth would you do? You just sit on,
Sit on deck and sip Mai Tais.
So the ships nowadays are so large. There's so much to do. I think I said that I love learning about like the local areas. Well, on cruise ships, especially, they usually will have different sessions where you can learn about the port stops that you're going to be making. So you
Hmm.
learn about the local area that way. And in a way, it's kind of like the Camino in that you only have one thing to do,
Hmm.
and that's do exactly what you want to do on the ship. It's totally
Hello.
your schedule.
Ah.
Unlike the Camino, you don't have to worry about where your food's going to be because it's all around you.
It's on the other deck. Just go
Yes,
there.
yes,
Yeah.
right. I liken cruising to wine tasting, where if you go to a wine tasting, you get to try different varieties of wine and you get to choose which ones you like. And then you get to buy whatever bottles you want. Well, in cruising, you stop at different ports, you get to sample what they have, and then you can decide to go back.
Okay. It's like a preview experience.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. And how much time do you have at each of the ports?
So basically, a day.
Okay.
I think in Vigo gets in the morning, and they actually have trips to go to Santiago de Compostela. They're short excursions. I probably won't do that. I'll probably revisit some of my old haunts because the Camino goes near Vigo.
One of the routes does. Yeah. One of the versions of the Portuguese does.
Yeah. And so even if I don't take that particular route, I can go out and explore some of it
Yeah.
in Vigo.
Okay.
So you have typically about anywhere from 8 to 10 hours in a port, typically.
Okay.
So it's enough time to get ashore, do a shore excursion, or in my case, in Porto, I'm hoping to find a couple of different varieties of port that I want to
Yeah.
bring back. And instead of having to lug them up to Southampton, I'll just wait till I get back to Porto and then I'll go buy them.
That is smart. Yes.
What happens on a cruise ship is typically if you buy wine or alcohol in a port, the cruise ship stores it for you because they don't want you drinking it on the cruise ship. They want you drinking their wine or
Of
whatever,
course.
but they store it for you and then they give it back to you the night before you get off the ship.
Okay.
And then I just put it in the bag. Then I'm going to check on the flight back and take it home.
You got this worked out. Ooh, okay. So this is intriguing. Would you be willing to share with us just a ballpark of what a cruise like that would cost and how many days it would be?
So this one, for just a single, it was $1,900
Okay.
and it's 13 nights. So 14 days, so 2 weeks.
Sounds like pretty good value.
It is.
Uh-huh.
And that's for a single.
Okay.
There's a possibility my husband will fly over and go on the cruise back with me.
Okay.
So if he does that, then, it goes up a little bit. But I mean, effectively, I look at it in terms of airfare,
Uh-huh.
where if I were to fly back from Southampton, it would probably be $700-800 to fly. But this way, I get to go on a cruise ship. I have all my meals paid for. It's like a floating hotel. I get to stop in a port that I've never been in, which is Bermuda. I get to visit places that I was just in, and for you know a little bit more than $140 a night, I guess you could say.
Yeah. Which it's awfully hard to get a good hotel in Europe for $140 a night.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that transports you to the next place.
That's moving. Thank you very
Yes,
much.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. The one thing that I always wonder about, not so much worry, but wonder when it comes to cruises is what's the required wardrobe for a cruise?
Well, so I tend to be a very casual person, in case you can't tell, and I there are some cruise lines where they have a dress code to
Okay.
eat in like the main dining room. Most cruise lines, though, have a variety of different dining venues.
Okay.
And if you don't choose to get dressed up, you don't have to.
Okay.
And so that's going to be the case on this, where I mean, I might have like a nice blouse and a nice pair of pants, but
Okay.
I'm not going to take formal evening gowns. I'm just not that kind of person anyway. But
Okay.
even if I were, I would not be taking them on this particular journey. I know this sounds weird, but my biggest concern about the cruise back is how I decompress after the Camino. How all of a sudden, from walking every day to, I mean, if I walk, I mean, I can walk around the cruise ship, and when we stop in ports, I can walk. But that's actually my biggest concern. Originally, I saw it as a means of like rest and recuperation
Uh,
after the Camino. And now I'm wondering if it's going to be a little bit harder than I originally thought it would be.
Uh-huh.
But I mean, worst case, I can just get up in the morning and walk for 6 miles around the cruise ship.
You'll be doing laps around
Yes.
every deck, around, down, around, down, around, down.
So my husband and I just got back from a cruise, and I went out and I walked every day on the cruise deck just to get in a couple miles.
Fabulous. Yeah,
So
fabulous. And just so you know, that question is on everyone's mind is how do I come back from the Camino?
yes,
How do I re-enter? How do I bring home? How do I sustain whatever it is I achieved on the
that's what I
Camino?
was just about to say. For me, it's not how do I end it, it's how do I continue it.
How do you continue it? Yes. Camino sustainability.
Yes, it might not be a muscular thing. I mean, part of it's going to be muscular of just teaching my muscles that, okay, you don't have to walk 24 kilometers today.
Yeah.
But a big part of it, I think, is going to be the mental and emotional, just gathering that in and keeping it
Yeah.
and building it.
Yeah. Have you thought about how you will do that?
Um, yes and no. So a lot depends on, well, first of all, how I get up to Southampton. I have a couple of different alternatives to get up there from Porto. I can fly, I can take a train, I can rent a car. So I haven't quite figured that out, but I'm kind of letting that flow.
Okay.
But that's going to be part of my um it's not so much decompression, but just my realigning myself with my new travel mode and plans
Okay.
is going from Camino travel to post Camino travel.
It's very different.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm just thinking um, about how to get there. That's one of my favorite hobbies is to figure out how to get somewhere. And I know that there are regular flights from Santiago to London. I don't know if that helps at all. How close is London?
I had thought about that. So it's just like a couple hour train ride from London down
Okay.
to Southampton.
Okay.
As I said, I love taking public transportation. So I don't have to, I'm not going to go in a car, and I'm not
Yeah.
going to, you know, have a limousine pick me up. I just am going to find my way there.
All right. So, yeah. So, up to Southampton, get on the cruise ship, 13 days, 13 nights, 14 days to get
Mhm.
back home. And that,
Well, it's actually not to home. That just gets me to Fort
oh,
Lauderdale or
that's right.
to
That's right. To Fort
I forget it.
Lauderdale.
It's Fort Lauderdale. It might be Port Canaveral too. I can't remember. It's one or the other.
Okay.
But then just arranging a flight home is
Okay.
no
Easy.
big deal. Yeah.
Yeah. Super easy. Yeah. So I love that. I love that you are now ahead of time thinking about that transition. And I use the word transition, but it sounds like it's a continuation of your
Yes.
Camino experience. And how do you transition from Santiago to Southampton to the ship, back to Florida, back to home? Yeah. It's lovely to think about that ahead of time.
As I said, it's partly muscular,
Uh huh.
like physical transition, and then part of it's emotional and mental transition as well.
For sure. Some of it too is chemical, those endorphins. You get so accustomed to the rush of
Having them all the
endorphins
time.
all the time. Yes. And then when you stop walking and you don't feel that euphoric experience, people sometimes mistake it as depression.
How does that affect you during the Camino when you have the endorphins going all day long and then you stop walking?
Yeah. I think because your body gets so tired that it sort of takes care of itself.
Well, plus I guess you have the Camino community. You have people
Yeah.
who are doing the same thing, so you can kind of keep it up just by the social aspect of talking about it and communing.
And sometimes endorphins alone, that's not enough to bring the joy on the Camino. For some people, that won't be anything. People who are already very active and very fit will be accustomed to that level of elation. Their bodies are already finely tuned to that. Then there's the other aspect of it, of the community environment that you described, the connection to the culture and to all the people on the trail and the local people who are serving the pilgrims. But then there's also the inner work that a lot of pilgrims do that you wouldn't look at and go, yay, let's do that. Because some of it can
Right.
be deep and can take you through some dark neighborhoods in your mind. So, yeah, it's kind of all of it. And we just don't know what we're going to get until we get it. Yeah. All right. Well, I love hearing your story. I love what you're doing. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us before we wrap up?
I just wanted to tell you what an inspiration your podcast is to me.
Oh, thank you.
I go back and I listen to, different episodes, and then I have a whole list of the ones I haven't listened to yet, and I try to kind of plan it out. So every time that I walk on my walks, almost every day, I'll listen to one of your podcasts. And I just wanted to tell you that your goals of inspiring, encouraging, empowering, and assisting is amazing, and it's definitely happening for me. And I just wanted to tell you how much I appreciate it.
Diana, that means a lot to me. It's always a delight for me to hear that what I set out to do is actually landing that way.
It definitely is.
I'd love to hear any specifics you could share about what is inspiring you and what works for you so I can do more of it.
I think in terms of the inspiring and the empowering is hearing the stories of the other people who've been on your podcast and
Yeah.
just hearing some of their reflections and your response to their reflections, where you always build people up. You always let people know that they have your support.
Mm.
And instead of coming in and saying, well, you could do this or you could do this, it's like, what do you think you could do? And you empower people to reflect on what they're doing. Yeah.
I appreciate that feedback. Yeah. Again, when you set out to do something and it actually happens, it's like very exciting. Yeah, it's very exciting. Thank you. Really
Yes.
appreciate knowing that. All right. Well, do you have any questions for me?
I'm planning on getting the WhatsApp app
Okay.
because I know that that's going to be kind of instrumental in communicating.
Yes.
And I have Camino Ninja, and I'm thinking about getting a couple of the other ones, but it's not so much for the route because I trust in the Camino. I trust in the way and showing me the way, but more in terms of communicating with albergues or places to stay and just making sure that when I need that reassurance that I have a place to stay or that we'll have a place to stay, that I can get it. And if we happen to walk less far, that I have a way of resolving it. Or if we walk farther,
Yeah.
having a way of resolving that as well.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. WhatsApp is an amazing tool. And I think it's much more well known outside of the US, but it's catching on. What's beautiful about it is you can both send text messages and make phone calls as long as you have the number for the other person's cell phone. And it's definitely much easier if they're already using WhatsApp because then they get the message right then and there.
Right.
Super helpful, very handy. And a lot of places, a lot of albergues are relying on WhatsApp as how they take their reservations. So it's a great tool. And it also gives you a record of the conversation that you can refer back to. Yeah, it's like a text history. So when you get someplace, you can go, look, I have a reservation. This is me.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, super handy. Excellent.
Yeah, I think that's about it. Like I said, I've done a lot of thinking about the start. I haven't done quite as much thinking about the finish.
Okay.
So that'll be the next step.
Yeah. Interesting, though. You've thought a good deal about what happens after Santiago, which
Yes.
I think is the part that many people neglect to think about. So I think even if you don't think about Santiago or arriving in Santiago yet or for a while, you're already bookending this trip.
Yeah.
I think you're in good shape.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for sharing your story, Diane. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
All right. I'll see you out there somewhere.
I hope so.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.